So we want to display a progress bar while uploading a photo. Now here's the tricky part. In our photo service, in the upload method, when we call the post method of this HTTP class, there is no way for us to know how much of the file is uploaded. However, in the browser, we have this object called XML HTTP request, which is used for sending AJAX requests. This object has a couple of events we can subscribe to, and this way we can track the upload or the download progress. Let me show you how to do that. So back in the project, in the services folder, I'm going to add a new service, call it progress.service.ts. So a-service tab. So let's call this progress service. Now in this service, we're going to have a field called upload progress. And this should be of type subject of any, and we initialize it to a new subject object. Now what is a subject? Subject is a class that derives from observable. So it has all the characteristics of an observable, but it also gives us the ability to push a new value into that observable. So let's import it. You can see it's defined in rxjs/subject. So later, we're going to inject this service into our component and subscribe to this upload progress, which is like an observable. So as the file is being uploaded, we'll get an object that tells us how much of the file is uploaded. Now in your applications, you can have another field as well and call it download progress. Because as you will see shortly, tracking the upload and download progress is handled differently. So here we need to access the XML HTTP request object in the browser. Angular internally uses this class inside the class called browser XHR, which stands for XML HTTP request. So I'm going to define a new service here and call this one custom browser XHR, or we could call it browser XHR with progress. Now this class extends browser XHR. Let's import the namespace. Now in the constructor, we're going to inject our new service, the progress service, and you will see why in just a few seconds. So private service of type progress service. Now here, because we're extending one of the Angular classes, we need to call the constructor of the base class. Okay? Next, we need to override a method called build, which returns an XML HTTP request object. Now first, we need to get the XML HTTP request object that is built by the base class. So var XHR of type XML HTTP request, and we set this to super.build. So we're calling the build method of the parent class, okay? And then of course, we need to return it. Now here's where the magic happens. Before returning this object, we're going to subscribe to onProgress event of this object. So xhr.onProgress. We set this to a function that takes an event object. So event goes to like this. Here we can keep track of the download progress. So we can use the service that we injected here, this.service.download progress. This is a subject which is like an observable, but it also has a method for pushing a new value into this observable. So next, now this object we push into this observable is going to be available when we subscribe to this observable in our component. In this object, we're going to have a couple of properties. One is total, which is the total number of bytes we're downloading. And we can get this from event, the total. And the other is percentage. And here we need to do some basic calculation. So math.round, so event.loaded, which is the number of bytes transferred, divided by event, the total, which is the total number of bytes, and times 100. So in our component, when we subscribe to this download progress observable, every time there is a new value, we'll get this object. Now this is for downloading. For tracking the upload progress, we need to handle a different event. So let me duplicate this. And here we handle upload.onProgress. Then we're going to push a new value into our upload progress observable. Now the calculation is exactly the same. So I'm going to refactor this code and extract the creation of this object into a separate method. So a private method called createProgress. It takes an event object, and I'm going to simply cut this code here and return it from the createProgress method. Then in the next method, we're going to call this .createProgress from this event object. And similarly, here as well, this .createProgress from this event. Much better. So we have implemented a custom browser XHR, and with this we can keep track of the upload or download progress. Now we need to tell Angular to use this class instead of the default browser XHR class. So let's go to app.module. In the providers array, we're going to use provide and use class syntax. So we tell Angular, whenever you see browser XHR, use browser XHR with progress. And now let's import the namespace. Also, here we need to register the progress service as a provider. And finally, let's go to our component. So view vehicle component. Here in the constructor, I'm going to add another parameter, progress service of type progress service. And finally, in our upload photo method, just before uploading the file to the server, we want to subscribe to our progress service. So this, that progress service, that upload progress. So we can subscribe to this. Get the progress object. And for now, let's just display it in the console, just to make sure all this plumbing works. In the next lecture, we're going to add a progress bar. Now here in Chrome Developer Tools, in the Network tab, I'm going to select a throttling option. With this, we can simulate a slower internet connection. So I'm going to set this to regular 4G, which is like 4 megabytes per second. Now back on the vehicle page, I'm going to upload a file that is about 50 megabytes. Now look at the console tab. We get these progress objects. You can see the percentage is increasing. So in the next lecture, instead of displaying this in the console, we're going to use it to display a progress bar on the page.